Hey everybody, Brian Tro coming to you from Mossy Creek Fly Fishing with your fly fishing forecast. The date today is Monday, the 1st of May. So we got a lot of wood to chop, so I'm just going to jump right in and get to it. After weeks and weeks of relatively dry weather, very little rain, very little snow, we've gotten a lot of water and a lot of rainfall here just in the last few days. So depending on where you were in the western part of Virginia, on Saturday, we received anywhere from 1 to 2 inches of rain. Some places with higher elevation got even more. We got additional shots Saturday night. We got additional shots yesterday. Today, it's just spotty showers, nothing major or super heavy. But there's a chance for showers today, tonight, tomorrow. And it's really filled up a lot of creeks. In fact, a lot of places are not fishable. Okay, so we'll start with those. Our major river systems, the South Fork of the Shenandoah, the James River, they're all blown out. We've been reported to you last week from the river, and we're showing you all some of the spawning updates. So as far as that goes, here's the deal. It seems to us that the spawn is pretty fractured. As we were talking about last week, there were fish that were already done, and there was actually fry and fish guarding nests. But there weren't a lot of those. There was a lot of mature fish in staging areas, like close to spawning areas, but hadn't spawned yet. And then there was mature fish pushed off into deeper water, just feeding and weren't even up near the spawning sites. So fractured spawn is not the worst thing in the world. Look at what's just happened. We've gone from not only really low and droughty, but relatively warm river, and now everything's blown out. Could the fry that are there in the river be lost? Potentially, but there's a lot of fish that haven't spawned yet. In addition to the wet weather, the temperatures are a story too. So over the next 4 or 5 days, it's going to struggle to get out of the 50s. Up in the mountains, it's going to be in the 40s for highs. For lows, we're going to be in the 30s. So all the water temperatures are going to come down, and so that's going to affect the spawn as well. I think that we're going to see fish as hopefully the water levels balance out, and eventually the temperatures will warm up. Not this week, but soon. I think you're going to see fish back out spawning and on their nests. We've seen fish guarding nests as late as the first and second week in June in Virginia. So it's not uncommon to have this thing really stretched out. And this year we were very surprised at how early they were on. And so we'll have to see what happens. We won't be able to look into the water and give you good, accurate updates this week at all, because the water is just too big and too off color. So more to come on that. Let's move upstream a little bit. So some of your bigger trout streams, some of our big delayed harvest waters, our freestone streams, even some of our brook trout streams are just too big and swollen to go and fish. Reports out of the dry river for the last few days, really hard to access it. Remember, these streams don't really get muddy and silty, but they just get big. And when they get big, crossing them can be challenging or even unsafe. Finding calm little corners and pockets for the fish to hold in gets difficult as well. I was out brook trout fishing on Sunday, really high up at like 3,000 feet, and I found the same thing. I caught some fish, but would have to walk through the woods, sometimes 100 yards to find a calm little corner. So when these creeks get big, the first thing the fish seek out is a sheltering lie. Some of the pools have plenty of sheltering lies, but they don't have good feeding stations with all that flow and all that volume pushing through. So just because they have a place to kind of like hunker down doesn't mean that they're going to be feeding like crazy. And even if it does, like getting drifts that are drag free and stuff can be really challenging. So focus for the first time, I would say focus on some of the smaller drainages that fish well under high water. Okay, there's plenty of streams that come down off the west slope of the Blue Ridge that folks like to fish, but they've been a little droughty and the fish have been too spooky. Other places like tailwaters below dams, those places will be much more protected from high velocity flows. And then again, just give it a day or two. Like if we don't really get substantial rain for the next 2 days, you ought to be able to go up to some of these high mountain streams and find plenty of water to fish. Okay, they're the first ones to come up, but they're the first ones to drain out. All right, now what to look for up there. So brook trout are clever little dudes, and what they do is they almost never get caught in cutoffs, but they but they will school together when things get low. So we had all these fish in community pools for the last month or two because the water's low. When it comes up, they don't just like immediately rush out to every little nook and cranny, okay? So as you fish this week and you get back out there in the water, you still wanna kind of focus on those community pools. Now, if we have a wet spring from this point onward and the waters stay up and kind of full and they sustain those flows, the brook trout will start to really spread out. They don't wanna be on top of each other. They'll get in all those little transitional spots and you'll wanna start to fish each and every little pocket. But if you're going out the next few days and you know your stream well, you're still going to want to focus on those community pools because more than likely that's where they were when it came up on Saturday. And more than likely that's where they're still hunkered down right now, waiting for things to kind of balance out. Okay, so that's knowing your water, reading your water, and kind of staying safe. The spring creeks are fishable. They all got a lot of color to them over the last few days. They're not unfishable. Mossy Creek and Buffalo Creek and Beaver Creek, they all are stained. So all of you who love fishing big streamers and like to go ripping those through some dirty water, we've got cloudy, overcast skies for the next 2 or 3 days. So lower percentage chances, but you could catch one of the biggest fish of the spring by pulling some of those big streamers through off-colored water. Another element you have to kind of pay attention to over the next 2 to 3 days is wind. They're calling for like 18 to 20 mile an hour winds today, 20 mile an hour winds with gusts of 30 tomorrow. So if you do go out to one of those exposed spring creeks where you're out in the fields, it's certainly going to be chuck and duck. Just get the streamer on the water and then work it. So heavier leaders, bigger flies, basically the opposite of everything I've been preaching for the last few weeks. All right, now on to the good news. It's May. All right, they don't call them mayflies for nothing. And basically every major mayfly that's going to hatch is already hatching or will be shortly, okay? So you could see anything out there in the coming weeks, especially as things kind of balance out and warm up. March Browns, Cahills, Hendricksons. I actually saw our first drake hatch off the other day, so there'll be a couple early drakes starting to pop here and there. Sulfurs are coming off on the spring creeks. So plenty of food, plenty of bugs. If the flow is too big, all right, they're not going to pick dry flies off like they were a week ago. So you definitely want to go back to throw in some nymphs or some dry droppers and let the fish tell you whether they want to go all the way up or not. But the good news is the bugs have arrived and the water has arrived. We really did need this big shot of rain to set us up nicely heading into the summer months. So let things calm down a little bit. Feel free to call the shop and check in. It's going to be several days. Watch your gauges on the bigger rivers to find out when they've kind of come down and balanced out. And just be careful wading out there. Grab your wading staffs, you know. Don't be too proud to take that with you. It can save your life. Make sure your wading belts are tied up tight, okay, because the waters are bigger and they can take you. But there's a lot of fishable water if you know what to look for. And if you don't know where those spots are, call the shop, email us, or even better, stop in and ask us. All right, we'll have a lot of updates next week for you all. As the week draws on, things should just get better and better. So I will talk to you all next week.